There's a man selling energy orgasms to women without touching them. Does that sound like BS? Well, it should, because it is. All right. But he's exploiting something that is very real and very interesting. It involves your sex and understanding of sex and sexual psychology and sexual skills. So, if you're a guy who wants to be better in the bedroom and better in your relationships, you need to understand what's going on here. So, we're going to have a fun show today. A lot of we got grifters, we got sex, we got mansplaining. I mean, really, what more could you ask for on a Wednesday afternoon? So let's go into, if you missed some of my hilarious reels and shorts I did over the weekend when I found this guy. And this really goes all the way to my childhood. Not that I had anyone trying to do energy orgasms on me in my childhood. That would be probably a church thing. No, it was just, it actually traces back to the martial arts world, and I'm a big martial arts nerd. So we're going to have a lot of fun. It's kind of fun to revisit some of these grifters and these dorks that I grew up seeing and having to deal with. All right. So this has got a special place for me. So there's going to be some good stuff here, but let's go into just to get you up to speed. I'm going to share my screen on my Instagram here. Okay. So let's see some of the stupid things that to get you sort of caught up here. So what do we got? And it's muted. Y'all just horny.
Can you please more?
You can act like this.
I'm sorry. Can you stop breathing so loud, honey? He's like,
because you're not getting enough of this. If you're not getting enough of this, you're going to end up in some weirdo's living room with a European accent, scamming you, talking about energy healing and energy orgasms. Just stop being weird. Have regular relationships. Men, join my community today so you don't. Okay, so that's fun, right? So this is this dude doing this energy orgasm stuff. Let's go into a different reel because I covered it on a few of them, and they're all rather funny. The other day of these ladies doing this. And this. Oh boy, here we go. More fun. And this. Well, why are they? But that's not even the weird thing. Check this out. This dude has like almost 750,000 subscribers. 750,000 people watching this stuff. Why? Here's why. Either this is 750,000 horny white ladies with nothing better to do but talk about energy healing and faking orgasms, or this is 750,000 simpy guys. There they go again, subscribing so they can watch middle-aged women pretend to do energy healing. I don't know which one is it, right? Orgasms. I think it's probably both, right? But that's fun. I think it's probably both. Definitely the simps, and definitely some desperate middle-aged women. Hey, I mean, some of them are kind of attractive in the video or when you go through his Instagram. So good for Daniel Flash. The guy's name is Daniel Flash. I'm sure I'll get a cease and desist order if I ever become popular, because that's what these grifters and these charlatans like to do. They like to threaten people with lawsuits when they get called out for their bullshit. So whatever, I don't care. I'll fucking kill you. So that's all that matters to me. So it'll be fun to see you someplace, right? But this guy is name is Daniel Flash. That is his, we could call it a stage name because it might as well be. He changed his name from something else. I'll have to look into that for a second. I have some notes. But of course, I mean, he already sounds like a guy selling snake oil. I mean, dude, it's like, it's so crazy. It's like, if you're gonna, it's almost like the Charlie Kirk thing, right? If you're going to cover something up, like at least do a better job and maybe convince us without having so many holes in the story, right? It's like, okay, you're going to grift something. I mean, I would think you would even pick a different name that doesn't make you sound like a charlatan and a liar. Daniel Flash sounds like somebody who's going to steal your money. I mean, that's what the name sounds like. It's crazy to me, but people fall for the shit. People fall for it. And yeah, we're going to talk about sex today, but we're going to also talk about grifting. So we got two things because they're tied together. Why are these middle-aged women going to this weirdo to do energy orgasms? So we got to break down him first and the whole thing, where all this stuff comes from. So, okay. So this goes all the way back pre-80s, even probably around the 80s, to the martial art world. And it's so fun. I can't believe that this bullshit is resurfacing once again. Like I learned about how people lie and grift and do makeup stories back when I was very, very young in the martial arts world. I got funny stories all over the place about that. So, which you may or may not know about me personally, is I'm a big martial arts nerd. I like all kinds of martial arts. I like competitive martial arts. I have experience in boxing, and I love jiu-jitsu. Did some BJJ back in when I was more active duty, but something I'd like to revisit again. But my experience is in like weapons-based Filipino martial arts, and so some of the things that I do aren't always competitive, and they're just a lot of fun. I just enjoy it, and it's a lot of stuff. But there's so much bull stuff and nonsense in the martial arts world. It's just one thing I noticed is the F's. I call it the F's, so fighting, fitness, fucking, and finance. There's your 4 F's. All right. Fighting, fitness, fucking, and finance. Those 4 things are some of the biggest things that create existential threats or crisis within people, creates a lot of anxiety. Also is something that people have some serious goals with. Those 4 things, the 4 F's, are definitely a part of something in our lives. And so therefore you have a lot of grifters and charlatans that latch on to selling products and systems and all sorts of stuff. There's no shortage of people out there wanting to take your money involving the 4 F's, okay? Whether lying to you and making up things and just really getting you to part with your hard-earned dollars in those 4 things. The finance world, success grifters, all that stuff. The fitness world is huge, and different stupid diets and different things that are supposed to make you more fit. And all the lies in that industry. And then of course you got the fucking industry, which is your manosphere, your pickup artist, your red pill, your dating coaches. And I do fall into that category, but I'm just not a grifter. I actually will teach you guys real stuff, but I'm also widely less popular than the ones who are willing to lie to you. And then of course, so it's like the conclusion I learned and came up with a long, long time ago is people want to believe in magic. People want to be lied to. Okay. That is just what it is. Now, you guys who listen to me, you're taking really the cold hard truth bombs. You're learning about how the world objectively is so you can achieve real goals in your life. I mean, I think the key to having real success is part of it is being able to see through the bullshit and the stuff that's out there and the lies and the fantasy that people promote, and maybe be able to use that stuff to your advantage, right? But you have to see what it is. You got to see the lies and the bull stuff, and then you can start creating real goals and real concrete measures for yourself to get what you want out of life objectively, because you're dealing with objective reality and not lies and bullshit, right? But the martial arts world is filled with that. And I see now that it's moved from martial arts and fighting into fucking. So now we're into faking and fake energy work and orgasm stuff. And that's all over the net. And this dude has so many people following him and so many people showing up. He's guaranteed a multimillionaire. I mean, I guess good for him. I'm sure he's banging these women. And I'm sure, I mean, these married women, women with relationships who, whatever, have orgasm troubles or whatever their problems are. They turn to this grifter. I'm sure he bangs them. I'm sure that he steals their money. Like, there's no question. There's no question in my mind. I don't need the evidence. I don't need to see the film. Okay, it's real obvious. And I guess, hey man, good for him, getting his bag, getting his millions, and banging a bunch of middle-aged girls. I guess if that's what he wants to do, good for him. But we're going to debunk a lot of this stuff here, where it comes from. So just a little bit of history. Let's see if I can find a picture of the guy. Okay, let's see here. But it starts off in the karate world, believe it or not. And some legitimate stuff. Oh yeah. Okay. Do I got any pictures of this dude? All right, the dude I'm looking for right now is someone Seiyu. All right. I'm gonna white boy fuck up some Japanese history on martial arts. I'm not a Japanese martial artist, so if you're a Japanese martial arts nerd, especially you Bujinkan guys or like some of you karate guys, don't be offended. Just correct me in the chat. All right. But if you're gonna put bullshit in my chat or bullshit in my comments, I'm gonna make fun of you. I mean, that's just the way it is. Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? But there is a real history of Japanese martial arts that I'm going to severely botch right now because I don't do it and I'm a white boy, right? I fucking swear. Sensei. All right, let's see if we got this dude. All right. We got any images of this guy? Here we go. All right, this guy, yeah, he looks pretty cool in this photo. Let's open this up. Let's save image. Let's open image in a tab. Okay, cool. All right, I like this guy. This guy looks cool. All right, sweet. So let's go take a look at the start. Now, this was the non-grifting. So this is a martial arts guy, okay? And he's passed away now since. So he's a karate guy. His name was, I'm screwing his name up, Seiyu, also known as Taika Oyata. Oyata is his last name. And I mean no disrespect by botching his name up, okay? I found a cool picture of him. He looks like a badass here. This guy was a real deal karate guy. There's a Ryukyu family styles of karate. He had different, martial arts back in Japan, had different purposes and reasons for them. And, it kind of moved from, trying to kill people with samurai type stuff, right? And you had your jiu-jitsu and your judo. Of course, judo is more sport. And this is more of a karate that started to gear more towards self-defense rather than just like combat. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of, in that system, there's a lot of pain compliance, pressure point type of techniques, which eventually developed in the United States, got used by police officers and people like that for subject control. So you have to understand there's a difference between a subject who's willing to be controlled and will be controlled through pain, and let's say a drugged out subject who's not going to be controlled, and then you have to damage him or shut him down neurologically, like knock him unconscious or damage him with striking or use dominant body positioning to control his body, like in jiu-jitsu type stuff, right? Whatever. But so not everybody responds to pain compliance techniques in every situation, but it is very useful for security work, law enforcement, useful for certain types of self-defense situations. And at any rate, the guy had a karate system and it was pretty good. From my understanding, seemed pretty good. I've had a few guys come through some of the stuff that I had done and had experience with the Filipino martial art type stuff, who had a background in that stuff. And they showed me things and it seemed legit. You know what I mean? And so this guy, this karate dude, right, had introduced the idea of like using pressure points, okay, using joint manipulation to hurt people. And that's pretty cool, right? So a lot of times the grift starts from something very normal and very, solid, and and then somebody steps in and says, you know what, I could do that and use that to make money and to grift a bunch of stuff. And then that's what ends up happening. And yes, in the second half of this video, we are going to talk about sex. So don't worry. I didn't just say we're going to talk about sex and then talk about martial arts grifting. But this is all very, very like tied in. Okay. And if you guys got comments, questions, or whatever, of course, throw them in the stream. This is more of a fun stream today anyway, where we're going to talk about all these things. Because when you understand like how someone will take something real, okay, and then pollute it into something fake and then sell it, now you understand how these scam artists work and how it appeals to people's sensibilities. So it's really an important lesson. And there's a lesson here in how it applies to sex and orgasms and your bedroom stuff too. Okay, the psychology behind it, whether or not your woman is, let's say, experiencing high intense amounts of pleasure and having really good orgasmic experiences with you or not, can often be it is dependent on the psychology that goes into it. So believe it or not, when you understand the grift a little bit, it helps you understand the psychology behind orgasms. I'm going to show that ties together. All right. But at any rate, so this guy had started this, he had this martial art. He was more or less the founder, but of course is based in a bunch of family martial arts around Japan. And anyway, he was pretty good, right? So good guy, whatever, seemed like a legitimate thing. But then you had grifters that would latch onto it. One of those grifters is a guy by the name of George Dillman. I don't give a shit if you like this guy. You're weird and you need to reevaluate your life if that's the case. And I'm going to go back into a little experience here. Here's how my experience with weirdos. Okay. So when I was a teenager, I wanted to believe in magic just like every other teenager. And I was in the martial arts world in the 90s and stuff too, in the 80s, right? Back when tournaments were cool and all that, right? And so I'm like, this is cool. I was open to anything. Like kung fu, that sounds awesome, death touch. Whoa, you mean you could touch somebody and they die a week later? Tell me how that works. Oh, there's a book on it over at Barnes and Nobles. I'm sure that's legit. The book on how to kill somebody with touching them a week later. I'm sure this book on that's legit. You know what I mean? There was just so much grifting going on, and there were adult people grifting it. This is what was crazy. I would be 13, 14, 15, 16, right? Being able to drive. I started to debunk things when I could drive to places and realize how much bullshit was out there. But like as a teenager and as a young, like a kid, I wanted to believe in magic too. And I see all these adults promoting magic and magical thinking. So my best experience, I have a few. This was really interesting. So in the martial arts school I trained at, it was a kickboxing school. The owner of the school was a very tough guy, very tough individual. I'll name drop him. Sure, I'll name drop. His name is Kerry Roop. He was, world champion level kickboxer back in the 80s. He fought. He probably still is fighting. He's probably got to be 80 years old or close to it. He's probably still getting in the ring. I mean, the guy is just a tough guy. And he was a very practical guy. Back then, he was very practical when it came to fighting and self-defense. There was just no bullshit to it. You know what I mean? And as much as I wanted there to be bullshit to it, because I wanted to believe in magic as a teenager, I had the influence of very good instructors at the martial arts school who would spar with you and make you realize that magic isn't real. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you're going to get punched in the face and you're going to have to figure out how not to get punched in the face and punch the other person. And it isn't magic. You know what I mean? It's just skill and it's just objective reality. And the objective reality of getting hit in the face and having to hit somebody back is a wonderful learning experience that everybody should go through. And so luckily, I had positive male influences, which, by the way, we're lacking positive male influences today in 2025 in places like martial arts schools, because things have gotten so litigious and people have gotten so weak, and we've lost those male role models. We need to bring that back, or you need to bring that back in your life. If you have sons, if you have children, you need to bring that back with your families, but that's a whole nother video, right? But anyways, I had those influences, luckily. But here's the thing. So in his pursuit of expanding, himself and learning different things, he decided to learn some Japanese martial arts, and he got in with an Aikido instructor in the area who, Aikido is Aikido, right? Like, we know it doesn't work in fights usually, but whatever. Okay. This guy was a well-credentialed person going back to Japan. There was practical things in there. So you're like, this is cool, right? I remember because my instructor was going, I started going to the Aikido school too, because I dabbled with everything. I wanted to learn magic from at the time. So, and I found out magic wasn't real, but I wanted to learn it. So I was trying to figure it out. And so I went to this Aikido school, and that was cool. And then I would see these classes, right? Oh, and then this other person who went to this Aikido school was also a competitor in something called Shambara, if I'm going to say it correctly, which are these, and I'm saying it wrong, I'm sure, but it's like these sort of, I don't want to say Nerf, because that's not really right, but it's these padded sticks or longer sticks or different weapons, and they basically beat each other with these padded weapons. Now, the padded weapons aren't that padded. I mean, you're not going to walk away. You're not going to go to the hospital, but they hurt. They give a little bit of a sting, right? You get some feedback that you just got hit by one of them, all right, which is a good thing. And they used to have tournaments, point-related tournaments, where they'd hit each other with these objects. And it was a lot of fun as a kid. Now, there's a guy who had competed in Japan with this thing, and he used to train at the school too, where I did the kickboxing and other martial arts at, right? So the main school I trained at, this dude, this guy who competed in Japan would train also at this other school, and he used to spar us with these padded sticks and beat the shit out of us. So he was an adult male beating the shit out of teenagers with padded sticks. Not even criticizing him for it. It's a great experience. More adults should beat the shit out of their teenagers for fun in a safe, not going to the hospital sort of way. I think it's a good character builder. Anyway, so this dude used to beat the shit out of us with these things. Like, we couldn't get a hit it off. Could not hit this guy, right, as a teenager with this. He was just so good at this particular thing. And it was so practical. I mean, if he had like a sword or a blunt object, you just weren't going to win a fight against this guy unless you shot him, right? Like, or unless you either shoot him or out grapple him, because you have to hug him so he can't hit you with the thing. Like, his timing and his skill was just that good. So anyway, so we have all these practical things happening in the martial arts world where you're getting direct feedback and you realize, yeah, this stuff works, this doesn't work. Then I go to this Aikido school and I see the same guy who beats the shit out of us with these little padded sticks doing energy work. Oh, you know what I mean? And then the other person's like, oh, I feel your energy. And they fall down. And then they're throwing each other without touching them. And I'm watching this. And as a kid, I'm like, well, this has to be real. I mean, these are adult people. They're not insane people who belong in an asylum somewhere, right? Where I'm not in a mental institution right now. I am in a martial arts studio where we just did some judo type stuff and did a little randori, tried to throw each other around, like, yeah. So, I mean, like, this must be real. These people have jobs in real life where they go to an employer or a business, or they're self-employed and they have clients and they have to be normal people. So surely they're not just doing and whoa, and I'm falling down without touching them and doing energy work. Surely they're not just doing that as adult functioning members of society and making it up. Surely it couldn't be bullshit. I mean, this is what I'm thinking as like a teenager watching this stuff. You know what I mean? I found the magic. It's got to be fucking real. I'm telling my friends, dude, you can throw people with your chi. It's sweet. I'm like selling it to my friends. You know what I mean? Now, of course, if I have to get in a fight as a teenager, I'm definitely, punching them and trying not to get punched. But hey, we get to have fantasy discussions about energy work as also when we're not having to fight. So, okay, that's cool. And I'm thinking these guys must really have something. Until, of course, my very practical world-class kickboxing instructor was like, well, why don't you try it on me? And then the, Aikido instructor's like, and unlike everybody else who would fall down and act like they got thrown by energy, he just kind of walked on past like nothing happened. And then he's just like, oh, I guess it doesn't work on me. And then that was it. That was the only logical discussion we ever had about it, was I guess it doesn't work on me. And that's it. So we're going to go back to kickboxing and throwing each other. So seemed to make sense to me, I guess. Anyway, that was some direct experience with that. And I realized, okay, these people are full of shit. I think they're adult people who are functioning members of society, who have real jobs, real personalities, families, some of them very nice, some of them very, very cool, who think that there's something called energy work where you throw people without touching them. And then they use a mixture of some science, like science behind acupuncture, acupressure, and stuff that's actually real, that's used in the medical field, but then it gets polluted to tell lies and to grift this thing, and vast amounts of people believe in the grift. It's quite amazing, actually. And that's it's just so fun. It's just so amazing. And so, but you have to see it for what it is. So now fast forward, I'm doing this Filipino martial arts stuff, and there's like a lot of cross training and cross referencing from this guy named George Dillman, who basically ripped off and reappropriated Japanese culture into his own goofy system, which started off as pressure point fighting, which really barely worked to begin with. I would say the Oyata version of karate, the Ryute is what it's called now. That's practical karate style martial art or whatever, if you're into that. Do you know what I mean? But this George Dillman guy polluted that and turned it into his own thing and sold it to millions of people. Like the same way these adults I watched as a kid act like they could and just fucking throw people was the same thing that was happening here in the Dillman world. And I even got to meet George Dillman once. And the guy is a complete grifter. He's completely full of shit. He's still alive today, somewhere in his 80s, being full of shit somewhere. I assume. I don't know. And there's a whole lineage of people who are full of shit also, who will justify, because it's a cult, right? It's very much cult-like behavior when these people go into this stuff. All right. And there's so many lessons here about frame and about what the mind will do to trick you, how people can get duped and tricked, how people, once they're duped and tricked, they don't want to abandon the idea. You know what I mean? They don't want to be like, that this thing I've been training in for the last 5 years and spent a lot of money on it and spent, several hours a week on is actually full of shit. It's actually bullshit. I need to go, enroll to some Thai boxing, or maybe enroll over in, jiu-jitsu school somewhere, like, because everything I'm doing is crap. They don't say that. People, once their egos get invested, they stand by their dumb ideas into death. You know what I mean? And this is a lesson when it comes to sex too, because sex is something that people are very, very ego invested in. And they will stand by their bad ideas about seduction till the day they die, some of them, right? They were unwilling to let go of those ideas. And they'll believe in these fantastic, silly fucking ideas. And you see this shit in the red pill manosphere parts of the internet, as well as the female empowerment dating coach parts of the internet. It's all a bunch of grifters selling nonsense, and people buy it. People fucking buy it. This guy has almost 750,000 people, the guy I showed, making girls fake orgasm with energy. He has so many people on his Instagram, so many people, millions of people who will pay this guy money. And then people who, like myself and like many other people out there, who sell practical solutions to real problems. It's not interesting enough for most people. Practical solutions to real problems, not that interesting to the majority or the masses. They don't want that. They want magical thinking, and they want bullshit. And this is proof positive of that, because you see how popular all the bullshit is, and how only in a mediocre level of popularity the non-bullshit is. It takes a very, very good marketer to not be full of shit and yet reach millions of people. And there are some that do that too, but they're very talented. Their marketing team is very talented. It's very, very difficult to do that because people want to be lied to include the girls that you're having sex with. Okay. And I'm not suggesting you lie to them, but I'm leading you to an understanding about how sexual psychology works and how imagination and fantasy does play a strong role in that. So it is going to tie in together. So some more grifting on the martial arts side of it, though. I'm really talking probably too much about it, but that's okay. It's fun. All right. So here's your George Dillman. And what is he doing here? So this was a special on National Geographic where he gets debunked. I haven't seen this video clip in a long time, so I'm going to kind of work through it.
It flows throughout the body.
There we go.
Without it, you don't function.
And it's a radio wave.
It's a radio wave, guys.
Science can't find chi. It doesn't exist as far as science can tell.
Without a doubt, George Dillman is a force to be reckoned with. He's a 9th degree black belt who has taught everyone from Muhammad Ali to Bruce Lee.
He didn't teach those guys.
And he's able to drop just about anyone using applications of pressure to certain points along the body.
You can't take it there. He's probably weak right here.
Okay?
Pressure point knockouts.
It's funny.
The easiest.
None of this works on me either. Why? Because I know it's bullshit. That's why. So this is your George Dillman back in the day when he was like real popular. Like I said, he's still alive. He's just very, very old now. And so he did some marketing stuff in the 80s with Oyata Sensei, and had gone to some seminars with Oyata Sensei, and then just completely repurposed the guy's whole system. That's basically what he did. He went to these seminars in the 80s and trained from some of the Japanese martial artists and founders and grandmasters for a few seminars, not enough to really master them. And then he just created his own grift. And Oyata Sensei had tried to distance himself, and their camp was like, no, this guy, he's fake. They would say he's not real, and they were pretty ticked off by him. You know what I mean? And Dillman, interestingly enough, would just be like, oh no, I trained with him. He's good. I have a lot of respect for him. Like, he wouldn't even say anything bad about the guy. And this is also pre-internet forums, and a lot of truth can come out on the internet a lot easier nowadays than it could back then. So people just didn't. He just continued the grift and just said, "Oh, you know, he's a great person. What you know? Well, too bad. You know, too bad he feels that way. Like I enjoyed my training. I learned a lot from him, and he just kind of did that, and nobody fucking questioned it. You know, and people today, I'm sure, to train under other people from his lineage, they really don't. You know, they don't question it. When of course this guy, you know, the guy from the original karate system who wasn't doing this stuff, who was doing real stuff, completely distanced himself from him. In fact, he changed the name of the system he was using just because Dillman was more popular. And this is the point I'm making here. It's like, okay, this Dillman guy was more popular than the original founder of the martial art that he stole from. The original founder was doing real things that would be practical, and people were less interested in that. Like when I say less interested, I mean from a marketing perspective, far, far, far less interested. Dillman had this huge following all over the karate magazines, all over the place. I may attract some of his cult-like followers into my comment section from this video. That's how prevalent this guy was and how popular he was. He did train with Muhammad Ali. Now he trained Muhammad Ali, but he promoted bullshit to Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali was a practical boxer, one of the best fighters of the world, right? Just sort of fucking fell for this guy's grift because he was very persuasive. He's very charismatic. He's very persuasive. And his frame, so talk about, at least from a frame perspective, just like many cult leaders, their frame is impeccable. Like you go to say, well, this doesn't seem to work on me. This doesn't seem like it's real. Oh, yeah, it's fine. You just got to try it like that, you know, but maybe it doesn't work quite on you. Like maybe this, maybe that. And you'll see him do it in this National Geographic special. And it's crazy to watch the way that charlatan and, you know, con artists can just hold this frame. It's an important lesson for you too. You want to hold frame like these guys. The difference is you don't want to be a con artist. You want your frame to be rooted in reality and real stuff. Okay, but it's admirable to how confident they are when they are grifting their bullshit. It's admirable, and people just fall for it, which goes to show that our human nature is to connect with other people as social animals and to be persuaded. You know, it's inner human nature to persuade others and to be persuaded. And you can fall into that frame even when it's total bullshit. And any logical reasoning person should see that as bullshit. But like people in the frame, they don't see it. You know what I mean? And they're convinced of the wildest things. This is how placebo effects work. And this affects your understanding of frame and your relationships. This affects how you interact, you know, with other people, with people in your life, your frame or the frame of others. And it's not rooted in objective reality. It's rooted in feelings and communication and persuasion. And so this is why people fall for it. Smart people, talented people, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali. Now, I don't think he trained Bruce Lee anything. I think he met Bruce Lee, and then that's the bullshit thing. And then that's what I mean about the grift. You know, there was a relationship with Muhammad Ali, though, if I remember. A very loose one, though. You know what I mean? Maybe probably met him a couple of times. Maybe showed him some karate stuff, and Muhammad Ali was polite. You know, Muhammad Ali enjoyed martial arts and stuff, too. And he didn't, you know, he wasn't out there trying to debunk everybody. So he's out there just being polite. He didn't sit there and go, oh, yeah, it probably doesn't work. And I doubt Dillman was like trying to throw Muhammad Ali without touching him. I doubt that. All right. Highly doubt that. But even on National Geographic, they promote the grift. Do you know what I mean? They repeat the message. Messages that are untrue get repeated. Next thing you know, people believe it. And it's just amazing to watch this thing unfold. So you see all the no-touch stuff happening here.
This way to put a person down. I can put the largest person that you can find in the world, and I've done this, with that finger, I can put him on the floor.
It's the guy that's the big guy. He's bad
Oh,
on the street.
But that's
Interestingly enough, with all my years in special operations community, training with different people, not only myself and my own operational experience, but different people from different backgrounds. You know, I've worked with guys who were Navy SEALs. I've worked with MARSOC guys. I've met and worked with some Delta Force guys and contractors and CIA guys and infantry guys and fun. And I trained, did martial arts and did combatives training over at the JSOC facility. And interestingly enough, no touch knockouts never showed up. Pressure point fighting was never a thing. You would think that if this is so prevalent, that we would be doing this when and learning this to go to combat. But interestingly enough, we're not. And it's not that important. I mean, obviously firearms are more important, but even when we do combatives, we're not doing this horse shit because it doesn't work. But whole loads of people think otherwise, and it's pretty amazing, really, when you break it down.
just the beginning. Dillman claims to have adapted this technique to where he can knock a person out without having to touch them.
Use chi energy out of this hand, and we're going to affect up on the head at the third eye. Snap couple.
These fat weirdos, man. I don't know what
Back.
to say about it. Oh, he got him. Oh, you see that?
There we go.
All of
better
these
wake
karate
up.
techniques are made possible by manipulating chi.
Oh,
He makes a chi ball.
he's making it.
He'll get the radio frequency going between the hands. And
Radio frequency between the hands.
if you get up and feel, it's actually hotter inside that ball. I've seen him already knock people over with it.
He throws the
Love
chi
it.
in such a way that when he catches it, it knocks him backwards.
For Dillman, chi is like electrical circuitry that he can turn on or off with a simple, well-placed punch,
Oh, okay.
or even just a tap.
Could you imagine?
We entered-
Did you know that? You could do that, guys. Did you know? So, Pete, dude, this guy made millions of fucking dollars, bought the training facility that Muhammad Ali owned out in Pennsylvania, used to run clinics and seminars out of there. This guy made a ton of, this guy was incredibly successful. And this is all bullshit. I mean, this is all nonsense. And I don't, and what somebody, I don't even want to go through the nonsensical arguments people will use to defend it. But usually it involves, well, some of it's good. So, that's usually what it is. Well, some of it is makes sense. And it's like, just fucking train something else. Like what are we doing?
within a second or two if I throw the chi out too fast.
Oh, yeah. Where's the one where?
After seeing so many demonstrations, so many different techniques, so many different moves, you can't help but start believing.
They're opening up another door in your mind. It's just unbelievable.
I know I have chi energy.
Yeah. So opening up another door in their mind, you see it repetitively enough, you have to believe it. I just want you to pay attention because you think you're not susceptible to this. We're joking and laughing about this because we know this is bullshit on my stream, but every one of you has fallen for something, to include myself at one point. Luckily, I fell for most of my things when I was younger, but I'm as susceptible as anybody. When you get into your imagination and you get into someone else's frame, you can fall for shit. How many of you guys have made bad crypto investments, for example, or gotten crypto scammed? Well, there you fucking go. What do you think that is? How many of you guys have gotten grifted into doing something, buying something, or believing something that turned out to be untrue? That is what this is, okay? And we can laugh, but this happens to everybody. It's part of the human condition.
You can see it with the half moons. My chi is up now because of the filming. I have half moons in my fingertips now. That means the chi is just coming out.
But is the mysterious energy called chi really what's giving Dillman and his followers such extraordinary powers?
Okay, so
Or is it,
I wanna
as skeptics
point this out.
suggest,
This is a real shame. This guy here who's trying to do this stuff was embarrassed on this guy right here, showing back towards us. This guy, I think his name is Leon J., who was the son of a guy named Wally J., who had a very good jiu-jitsu system. All right. So Wally J had small circle jiu-jitsu, which was based on smaller joint locks, but Wally J himself was a competitor in judo and other jiu-jitsu systems and was a very skilled martial artist. His son, I understand, is a skilled martial artist as well and kind of inherited his dad's system. And here he is trying to throw people without touching them and getting in on the grift. All right. And he probably, I don't think he's trying to scam people. I think he believes in it because so many people believe in it. And that's the fucking thing, right? This is how crazy this stuff is.
Powers. Or is it, as skeptics suggest, simply a form of hypnotic suggestion?
Hypnotic suggestion.
It's time for a showdown. In one corner, weighing in at no more than 125 pounds, is chemist Luigi Garnaschelli. He thinks he can stand up to a knockout punch of chi because it doesn't exist.
Right. So we'll
Luigi
fast forward it.
was not ready to believe these things. So maybe was just staying there, seeing what would happen.
So poor Leon J here,
It didn't work.
who has an entire family lineage of practical, skilled martial arts stuff. You know, I don't know where he is today. But how unfortunate, how sad, right? Like this guy has an entire legacy and a living and everything built up with his family. Being a skilled martial arts guy has something very valuable. Like the martial art that he came from is valuable, and he could teach that to the world and offer a lot of value. And here he is getting embarrassed on National Geographic because he believed in something that was nonsense. And he was dealing with only what we could say true believers, all right, in other people who believe it. So they're in the bubble. So when he's throwing people and doing no-touch knockouts, it's with other people who believe in it, and through, as the skeptic says, hypnotic suggestion, they are responding. But then, of course, he deals with somebody who doesn't believe in it and isn't going to respond to the hypnotic suggestion and to the fantasy that the frame is proposing. And what you have here is it's not working, and he gets embarrassed on TV. It's pretty fucking sad, actually.
Okay. Dillman thinks he knows what went wrong
Now,
and has come up with a very interesting explanation.
Frame, dude.
The skeptic was a totally non-believer. Plus, I don't know if I should say that on film, but if the guy had his tongue in the wrong position of the mouth, that can also nullify it. Yeah, you can nullify it. You can nullify a lot of things done to you. In fact, you can nullify them if you raise those two big toes. Plus, if I say I'm going to knock you out, and you raise one toe and push one toe down, can't knock you out. And then if I go to try again, you reverse it. If you keep doing this, I won't knock you out. Plus, the skeptic was a totally non-believer. Plus,
Who's a non-believer, guys?
and I moved the line. Plus, I flatlined several people. Plus.
Anyway, you get the idea. We'll stop sharing that. Move on, okay? So that's it. You get the idea, though. It's like, oh my god! But the guy's frame is impeccable. I mean, it's bullshit and fake, and he's a liar. He's a con artist, but he doesn't. He's just so confident, and he just comes up with explanations. And the true believers in that pay him the money, who want to believe in magic, adult people with families, jobs, probably decent IQs. They're not all stupid. They're not all walking around with a 75 IQ. Some of these people I know, because I've met them in real life back in those days, that would believe in this stuff. They're like normal people, like they're good people, a lot of them. And unfortunately, they just fall to these false beliefs. In order to get results in your life, real results, you can't just fall to bullshit and false beliefs based in non-reality, okay? You want to hold frame and you want to be persuasive, but you want to do that and root that stuff in objective reality, or else you're going to fail. Okay, and it's going to cause you a problem. And a lot of the stuff you guys believe about sex and sexual psychology is untrue. You know what I mean? And will cause you to fail as well. The stuff you believe about the dating marketplace, stuff you believe about women, a lot of that stuff, a lot of those myths will, you can believe it all day and it's going to cause you to fail though. And that's the thing. All right. So now we move on to this other dude that I was covering here, this Daniel Flash person. Whoops. And I'm not going to keep going through his videos. We've gone through enough. In the interest of time, we need to get to the sex part. But so he has a lineage from this George Dillman guy. Okay, that's what the Q shows, whatever is. Okay, and that's where he trained with a guy, one of Dillman's students. Okay, and who had branched off from Dillman. So when you're a grifter, you have other grifters who go, because this Dillman was like, oh, I could take this legitimate part of Japanese culture and martial arts and just completely bastardize it, pollute it, come up with magical ideas and sell it. And people are dumb enough to believe it. And he was correct. And people did believe it. And he made millions of dollars. And so now when other people who are attracted to that, now there's a lot of different people who would be attracted to somebody like Dillman, people who want to believe in magic. But a subset of those people want to believe in magic so that they can have power over others. They want to believe in magic so that they can go create their own magic school to grift to other people and get a piece of that chunk of change. And a lot of it's not just money, though. It's notoriety. It's ego. This is a way for a lot of people who don't have much else going on in their lives to try to feel good about themselves and to try to be, the king of their own little empire, I guess you could call it, right? And so this is the way that they do it. And they grift through something like this, right? So you had this guy, his name was Pantazzi, Evan Pantazzi was a Dillman student. And then he had his spin-off. And then you have this guy, Flash, who his name was something else before. I put it in my notes, but I'm not really sure. It doesn't really matter. But this Daniel Flash guy had a different name, and he changed his name to sound even more like a grifter, which I find hilarious. But he then decided, well, wait, I can move away from this martial art application into fucking middle-aged broads, I guess, and having them fake orgasm on camera. And because there's so many simps and so many very thirsty, horny ass women who don't do well in the dating market, this is going to make me be a millionaire. And that's exactly what he's doing. So now you have this Flash individual who does all this stuff, and he calls it sensory energetics, and he's now doing no-touch orgasms. So you see the grift went from misappropriating Japanese culture and coming up with pressure point techniques, which half of don't work, then into knockout techniques, which 75% of them don't work, into energy work and no touch knockouts, which none of that works now. It's just all bullshit. You have to be a true believer in order for it to work, into no touch orgasms. So that is the the birth of the no-touch orgasm came from this whole little world. A little trip down memory lane for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. All right. But that's what's going on. So that's pretty funny. So that's what's up. It's just a repackaged grift. Now it's energy orgasms. Now, why is this important for my channel, for you to understand, and for the dating market? Well, if you're in my community and you understand things about frame, and you know how frame is important, and you know how persuasion is important, then this all falls in line. And also there's an aspect to female psychology that would cause certain women to fall for this grift. And there's just a number of things in play. But if you understand what those are, there's actually some lessons here. So you can be actually good at seduction and sex in the bedroom. You can create better sexual experiences for the woman or women that you have experiences with when you understand some of these things. I'm due, I've been saying it for a while, but maybe now is a good, and we're going to talk about the sex now. Okay. But I may be due for, in my community, we talk about these things all the time. So guys who are in my mastermind group, especially, they ask a question about sexual psychology and seduction. We have these very in-depth discussions on how to basically create these amazing experiences for yourself and for the women that you're with. And that's all behind more or less a paywall in coaching, or we can have some discussion on the forums. So this is stuff that you need to know if you want to actually have a real sex life and stop, placating to girls on the internet and imagining stuff and watching porn. You want to have real relationships. You want your wife or your spouse or your girlfriend to have a good experience with you. This is the information you need. And I'm going to talk about some of that today. We talk about a lot more of that behind the paywall and in coaching. And so that's where you want to join my community. And that link is in the description of this video. I'll put the link in the chat. In fact, you guys need to be over there and you need to be doing stuff. All right. Because that's where you're going to get the real deal. I can only talk about so much of this stuff on YouTube. I'm already pretty well shadow banned, but I'm trying to engage with algorithms as much as possible. I just posted the link to get into my community at school. You need to do that because that's where we can have deeper discussions about sexual psychology. But now we're going to sort of branch into that discussion now, all right, and break this down, okay? So let me find my notes. Anyway, missing some notes here. Maybe I'm not. Okay, but we can go into... and if you have any questions, actually, you know what? Now is a good time for this. If you have any questions, definitely put those in the chat. And now is a good time to actually plug my community. And then we'll get into the sex stuff. Okay, so thanks for being patient, everybody, with that. Let me... need to play this first, so go ahead and watch this. Most men are struggling quietly. They look strong on the outside, but inside they feel uncertain in life, in work, and even in their relationships. I've spent years studying human behavior, persuasion, and performance psychology, helping men rebuild their confidence from the inside out. Because when your inner game is weak, it shows up everywhere. In your mood, your money, and how you show up with women. In our community, we focus on both inner game and outer game, so you can become the kind of man who leads with strength, clarity, and genuine presence. If you're tired of drifting, tired of feeling unsure, tired of getting poor results in your life, and ready to start showing up as the man you are meant to be, this is your call. Click the link, it's free to start, and join the Brotherhood now. All right, there we go. Nice little 1 minute plug. Thank you very much, guys, for the patience. Now, let's get into the stuff about the sex, right? So, why are these women? Why did adult people fall for no touch knockouts and no touch and energy, self-defense maneuvers that don't work? Leading into now, you have these women falling for no touch orgasms. Like, how is this becoming a thing? And how does this apply to actual real sex and real orgasms? So first, we need to look at the placebo effect. All right. The placebo effect is very powerful. You can use the placebo effect. In fact, we want to use the placebo effect to our advantage when we're dealing with our performance psychology. If you believe in something and believe something is true, it often becomes true because your mind believes it, so you feel like it's true, and the actions you take are as if the thing that you're thinking is true, and then it sort of, you get some results out of that. You know what I mean? Now, this unfortunately can be used in a bad way, and we don't want placebo if we're trying to cure a debilitating disease necessarily. But even then, though, placebo has been helpful for disease. Like if people believe a certain exercise protocol will help them lose weight, whether it's the best protocol or not isn't as important as them believing in it and then doing it. And then the consistency of taking those actions can cause the weight loss, even if it's not the best program, even if it's not fully backed in all the science and all that stuff. So there is an element of placebo effect that's happening when these girls are having these no touch orgasms and doing this stuff. There's an element of group think and group effect, right? And there's a definite element of hypnotic suggestibility. All right. And so we'll get into some of this stuff here with a little. So here's the thing. We've done research. There's hypnosis studies going back to 1985, and I am a master hypnotherapist. I will tell you there's a lot of placebo effect, and there's a lot of bullshit in hypnotherapy too. And I'm saying that with somebody who is a certified master hypnotherapist. I do hypnotherapy, science-based hypnotherapy with clients, and we get really effective results. Again, things rooted in reality can give you some great results. But there is, as a careful about this placebo effect, and if I'm using it, at least we need to be aware of it. It's okay to have a belief and have the placebo effect work to your advantage. But it's problematic if you are attributing something. If you don't know the reality of what's going on, it can be problematic. Okay. Now what we found is that fantasy and hypnosis can trigger an orgasm for a woman. It doesn't work quite as well for men, although, men can have the feeling of experience an orgasm, but it's not very well supported that a man will actually ejaculate or orgasm from just fantasy or not being touched. All right. But women can. So there is a mind-body connection that happens with orgasms and with women and especially. All right. And so that's something to be aware of, that this mind-body connection is really important, because there's something called, women can have a mind-induced climax, and that is backed by scientific studies, right? It's a psychosomatic response. And so what that means is, yes, the body is responding. So a woman's body does respond to sex in a certain way. However, it's how her mind is framing and responding to that sex. That's what makes all the difference as to whether or not she experiences pleasure in an orgasm or whether maybe she experiences pain. Okay, even. So let me, illustrate that even a little bit better for you. So it's like a woman's brain can disassociate from her body, and it can cause her to not experience pleasure, not experience an orgasm. Think about sex for a minute. Like, yes, there are different ways to physically stimulate the vagina, the clitoris, the different erogenous zones inside the vagina, like the G spot, the A spot. And a lot of that stuff is tied to the clitoral organ, which envelops the opening and travels through the vaginal canal. The clitoris is not just on the outside of the body, even though that's where most of the largest concentration of the nerve endings are on that little, the clitoral button under the hood that's outside of the body. That's not the only place where there's erogenous zones that create orgasm. Women can have deep body orgasms and stuff like that from those erogenous zones inside, and that stimulation, as well as the outer clitoral stimulation from what's under the hood. So there's your quick anatomy lesson, but that is not as important as what's happening psychologically, believe it or not. There's only so many different ways to take a thing and go in and out of a thing. You know what I mean? Like sex is not that complicated. Yes, there are different ways and subtle ways to physically stimulate certain areas better. That's true. And those are things that, again, I teach when asked, and by sometime in the beginning of next year, there's going to be a sexual psychology course that will drop and for members of my community. So that is coming up, and we're developing that material through some of my mastermind calls. So that stuff will happen. We're going to be talking a lot more about sex behind the community, because that's where I can do that safely without dealing with censorship. And then we'll talk about the physical techniques. But what your guy brain needs to understand, though, is the physical technique is not really as important as what's happening psychologically. The physical part of what's happening just has to be stimulating enough. There's a mind-body connection, and what's psychologically stimulating frames the physical stimulation, not so much the other way around. I'm not saying that sex is not a physical act. It's not that the orgasm for a woman is completely psychological and completely, divorced from her body. That's not the case, because it's actually her psychological frame, or her mind, that has to connect to her body to feel and to experience those sensations at a deeper level in order to have more intense sexual experiences. But that being said, though, it's the psychology that counts. What's happening in her mind, and how to mentally, and also it's emotionally and neurologically connect to her body and experience what she's experiencing. That's going to make the difference. She could have, for example, the same size things and the same technique going in and out of her body from a guy that she has less desire for, is less attractive, maybe even in case of being assaulted. All right. And she could completely disassociate her body and experience no pleasure from that. Let's talk about that in real life now, for some of you guys who listen to me, who have experienced this. The wife, the woman you married, has gotten herself into this mental framework where she's so detached from you sexually and so unattracted to you as a husband that sex becomes a duty to her. So what does duty sex look like? What's that starfish sex? She's just a dead fish because she's disassociated her mind from her body, and what she's experiencing physically is very just a low level stimulation and not leading to an intense experience or an orgasm. Whereas then the guy she cheats with, or maybe an ex-boyfriend that she was really excited about years ago, that guy did less physical stimulation, and she had more mind-blowing orgasms and higher level of intensity, just because her brain connected to her body differently. And because her psychosomatic experience with that guy was different than the experience she's having with you during duty sex, because she's been married to you for a while and she's been practicing basically psychologically divorcing herself from that relationship. So there's a great scenario. The same woman with the same vagina under the same stimulus, right? Or even less stimulus in some cases, experiences higher level of pleasure with one psychological framework, lower levels of pleasure with another psychological framework. So the psychological framework and what's going on up here becomes the determining factor for her intense experiences or lack of intense experiences. This is why you guys who are so focused on the physical, because your guy brain wants to treat a woman's body like it's a fucking car, you know what I mean? Or something like you're going to open the hood and look at the parts. Let me see, like, what would be more interesting to most guys is if I showed a diagram of a vagina and it had a bunch of labeled parts and said, and this is what you do. You press here and you vibrate that and you spit on this and you put some, you know what I mean? This is what you guys want. I know, because I've been fucking coaching for a long time. Whenever I'm like talking technique, guys are like, whoa, what's next? You know what I mean? What way do I hoove at her clitoris so something happens? Like, I mean, that's what guys want. What's the move? You know what I mean? Let me watch some porn now. That's what gets a guy brain. But when I talk about the psychology, some people are interested, but it's just less interesting for a lot of guys. They want to see boobies and holes and butts, and they want to know the ways to touch them. That's how your guy brain works. But you got to grow from that, or you're never gonna fucking have the sexual experiences you want. It's what's going on in the brain, okay? And seduction happens up here. It's what's going on in the brain that causes her to connect with her body, so that whatever moves you're doing on her body actually have the effect that you're looking for. And the reason this guy can do these psychic or energy orgasms and all this stuff is because the girl is in a psychological framework. Now, some of those girls are just faking it and doing it for attention and doing it to be part of the crowd. So there's an element of that. But when you do something hard enough and long enough, you tend to, just like what that girl said in the National Geographic video, when you see it enough, do it enough, whatever, you begin to believe in it. So when the women are doing it and going through the motions, even just to be socially accepted by the other women, and maybe to get a little bit of attention by doing their fake orgasm, well, they're doing it. So that grows into psychologically being open to maybe a real orgasm. So some of these girls are actually having real orgasmic experiences from this grifter or charlatan because of the hypnotic aspect of orgasms and because of this mind-body connections. And the sad part is many of these women have been probably married and divorced and had guys who had no idea what to do with their vaginas because they couldn't. And the women would be like, oh, it's me. I have a problem with orgasms. Maybe it is, but also what it is a psychological framework. And that guy, the guy she was with, is not trained on how to break through that psychological framework. You guys need to get trained on how to break through that psychological framework and have her psychologically connected to her body and open to orgasm. You, as the guy leading in the bedroom, need to know how to do that. That's something I teach in my community with guys who ask, and it's something I'll have in a course eventually, okay? Because if you don't do that, she's not going to have that experience. And that's what you guys want. I mean, you guys want genuine desire. You want a chick to love you. You want her to not cheat on you. All the things you want that you come to my channel for, you got to fuck her the right way. That's how that works. And you're not going to do that if you can't get into her brain and her mind. Okay. So back to the little slides. Back to the slideshow. So yeah, there's a hypnotic element to this. And this is why under research, women have been able to be triggered through orgasms, through hypnosis, through fantasy, and just deep fantasy. Women have been able to have orgasms. And not just placebo effect orgasms, where they think they're having one, but they've really never had one before, so they don't know what they're talking about, which happens a lot, by the way. But being monitored in the body showing those signs of a physical orgasm, okay, just from not being touched at all. All right. There's research. PubMed had an article on the imagined and erotic content can produce a real orgasmic response or arousal response. Guys will get aroused, usually will not have an orgasm. So guys are more physical in their psychosomatic response to sex. Guys are more leaning towards the physical than a woman's brain is. Okay, a woman's brain is, the physical experience is affected more by her psychological framework necessarily than a guy. All right, and so a guy can involuntary orgasm even just from physical stimulus, which that can happen to a woman, but much more difficult. And there's things that are in play with that, and I'm not going to get into women being assaulted who have had orgasms. It's a different topic, but there's psychological reasons why that happens too, which can be very, very horrifying for a girl who's in that experience, and very confusing. Okay, but that's a whole nother topic. And so when a girl can notice and trust her internal signs. When her brain is able to connect with her body more, she has more orgasms. Okay, and that's something called interoception, and they've done research on that. They have done the scans and fMRI studies on orgasms to see what parts of the brain are lighting up, and different parts are more active in the female brain than the guy's brain. Areas that light up emotion, reward, and some of those sensory centers, which would make us conclude that the brain has to be connected to the body in a certain way for a woman to have intense sexual experiences. Okay. So moving on, it's mental focus and hypnosis and suggestion. And I'll get into the suggestion part. That's that placebo effect that can connect a woman to her body and create orgasms without even physical contact. So not every woman was necessarily able to do that under the research, but in a fair amount of women, and consistently, women can have orgasm induced without you actually touching them. You can do this, by the way, to a girl you're with. I'll leave that there. Okay. But you can cause her to have an orgasm with very little touch, or sometimes barely touching, by inducing a mental focus and inducing a deep hypnotic state and sense of fantasy. Being a master hypnosis, this is something, a hypnotherapist rather, this is something that, I can tell you is a thing you can do. All right. With a willing participant, of course. It's the fantasy that's in the arousal triggers that matter. So it's not energy work, guys. It's not. All right. It's not energy. It's a woman getting involved in fantasy. Okay. And getting involved in a number of factors that are playing a role that are causing her body and mind to connect together at these seminars. And then she's either faking and pretending and doing the fake orgasm, or she's having a real one. But either way, she often believes it's real. Either way, we only would really know objectively if we hooked her body up to things that would sense her body changes during the orgasms, to know if they're real or not. But at the end of the day, a lot of these women will probably say that they're real orgasms. There'll be some that'll say, well, I was really just doing it because I felt pressured and I wanted to, other girls are doing it. You know what I mean? It's that social acceptance aspect of, especially that affects women, that would cause a woman to fake orgasm and end up on Daniel Flash's Instagram. But there's probably a fair amount that believe they're having real orgasms, or having real orgasms for sure, if we were to find out, by putting their body up to stuff. And it's because the fantasy and arousal in the hypnotic state can cause that. It's not energy. It's not, chi energy. It's not what this guy claims. And I'll get into why it's problematic that he claims that. Besides just lying to people, grifting, taking their money, there's a reason why it's problematic. Okay. Interoception, which is body awareness. Basically, interoception is the perception of internal bodily sensations. So you can do this. You could close your eyes, for example, in a hypnosis or even self-hypnosis, and focus on a particular area of a body. Let's say a tense area, a muscle tension, or a small cut, or a bruise, or like a little small injury, or even a small, just an area of the body. And you could focus on that intensely, and that you will experience that area of the body and whatever sensations that are happening there in a much more intense way. You can change your mind's focus to focus on an area of the body and then feel that area of the body in a more intense way. Or you could disassociate from that area of the body, which I've done for people for pain management in hypnotherapy sessions. All right. So you can disassociate mentally from areas of the body, or you can focus on areas. All right. And that's that awareness or perception is called interoception. It's a real thing. put to research. There's a citation there. And that general interoceptive awareness for a woman is linked to better orgasm function. So women who are more interoceptive, meaning aware of their bodies, are going to be able to orgasm more frequently and have more intense orgasms than women who are not. Part of probably the grift here, even though it's talking about energy stuff, which is not real. And I'm not saying acupuncture and acupressure is not real. There's real stuff and there isn't. And I'll tell you what he is doing is not real. It is rooted in that whole Dillman thing and no touch knockout nonsense. And it's all bullshit. But there is something real that is happening. Okay, which is maybe they're becoming more aware of their bodies and they're heightening that awareness and all that, right? And I'll get into the psychological aspect as to why they would do that there versus in the privacy of their own homes, to learn their body better so they could be better at having sex with their partners. You know what I mean? But therefore, learning, so for a woman and for you guys too, but learning to get into your body during sex will improve your sexual experience and your sexual pleasure. Many of you guys, I got a caveat here. So many of you guys are getting out of your bodies during sex because you are trying to disassociate because you don't want to come too early or because you have your performance anxiety. And this is why porn is damaging too, by the way, because porn gives you the results or the reward of an orgasm, the reward of sex, the illusion of sex without the anxiety. You want to be able to handle the anxiety and handle the performance anxiety, or else you're not going to experience sex at a higher level and you're not going to be able to create a higher level of experience for the woman you're with. So part of why porn and some of these things are actually really damaging is because you want to take that little bit of anxiety that every man gets from a little bit of performance anxiety and a little bit of, oh, this is a new person. Those questions. I wonder if she likes me. I wonder if she finds me, whatever the questions you have in your head. I wonder if she's having a good time. Wonder if I'm doing the right moves, right? Like all of those little questions that pop in the subconscious part of the brain during the act of sex and pre-sex, right? Prior to, you want to be able to change that anxiety into a drive of, I'm going to have an awesome, like I'm going to fuck the shit out of this girl. Like I'm going to smash this girl. It's going to be amazing. You want to turn it into that drive, much like a competitor does, like somebody who's going into a competitive athletic event, they got that nervousness prior to the event. You know what I mean? And instead of having negative self-talk, they learn as a competitor to turn that little bit of anxiety into a winning strategy and mindset. Their mind and that energy is pointed towards motivation and winning. You want to do that during sex. You want to be open to this great experience with the person you're with. You want your sensory perception to be turned on so you feel your body and her body, and you know how to move in the subtle ways to alter the reaction in her body. You want to be able to move and communicate with her in a way that opens her mind up psychologically and climbs into her body. And the smallest move or sensation that you can create they all add up to an intense experience for her. And you can't do that if you're disassociating from your own body because you're anxious and you're nervous. You're going to get too aroused, come too early, some of these different things. You want to have control over your body to where you can be highly aroused, yet still in the sexual experience and deciding and choosing when you want to come or orgasm. For my mastermind and elite members, I have a whole document on controlling your body, controlling your orgasms, and having multiple orgasms. I take out the pseudo spiritual aspects of that from the tantric world and the ego invested BDSM world. I take out the BS and we talk about physiology, mind body connection, the psychosomatic response, and then that way you learn in a simple way, in a very, very short document, and some training and some skills that you actually have to train. You actually do things, okay, to develop the skill, and you can have the amazing sex as a man. You're not worried about your body. You're not worried about being out of control. Do you know what I mean? You can get erections, maintain erections, and decide when you want to orgasm and decide how many of those you would like to have. That's all available to you, but you have to pay for it. I don't give that one away for free. All right. But that's in a document in the classroom to all my members. You know, the free membership in school, we can talk about it and we can do some things. You want the document, though, you actually have to talk to me about a coaching program because there's work to be done. It's not just read a document passively and now you magically have the sex better. It's not how it works. You actually have to do things. But that's why it's really important as a man that you have that body control and that body awareness. You don't get that from disassociating from your body. In order to create the environment so she can associate with her body and open herself up psychologically and get into her own body, you have to have that body awareness, and you have to be able to not be bogged down by your own performance anxiety and some of those things. All right. And so that's an important lesson here. Okay. It's an important lesson. Many women struggle to have orgasms. Okay. And that they end up at a seminar like this guy's seminar doing energy stuff because they disassociate from their body. And then why do they disassociate from their body? It's because they have a lack of emotional safety with the men that they're with. Why do they have a lack of emotional safety? Sometimes it's the guy's fault, and sometimes the guy makes her feel unsafe. A lot of times it's not his fault. It's her mental framework going into the relationship. Women have been poorly socially conditioned about men and about relationships. Women are trained and taught not to trust men and all this stuff, some of which does make sense because there's a lot of fucking creepy, terrible guys out there that will harm a girl's well-being, whether or not physically or just in general. And so there's reasons for women to be wary of men, for sure. Like even though most of you people watching this right now who will see this, most of you guys are men, right? But you got to admit there's a lot of fucking creep weirdo losers out there who women should never open their legs from. They do it anyway, but they shouldn't. And it causes danger, causes problems. So there is reasons to be wary, but unfortunately that they're socially conditioned to do that with everybody. They're not learning a vetting process for men in order to who should they really open their legs for in a way that's meaningful. And so they'll marry a guy. They don't feel like they trust that guy. And then the guy doesn't know what to do with their body. He's disassociated from his body. Nobody wants to talk about sex because everyone thinks they're good at it and most people are terrible at it. So it's a major point of ego protection, just like fighting. Everyone thinks they can fucking fight. Most people fucking can't fight. You know what I mean? And most people have had no training at all in fighting, but they all think they can do it. It's the ego protection. That ego protection causes you to have massive blind spots to not get anywhere. You as a man sexually are many of you guys watching this are not good at sex at all, or just not as good as you should or could be for whoever is attracted to you, for whoever ends up being in the bedroom with you, because of the ego protection. So we got to scrap that first and start learning some real things. And unfortunately, fake energy bullshit orgasm seminars is part of the ego protection for women. And I'll get into that too. This is a bit of a long stream, so hopefully you guys aren't bored. For the few of you who've stuck around, throw a thumbs up or some shit, man. You know, let me know you're still engaged, because I've been doing this for an hour and a half, and maybe I got 20 to 30 more minutes of information. Because if you guys aren't interested, you know, I'll just save it for the guys who are in the community, right? But anyway, so yeah, do something. Let me know in the chat if you're enjoying this conversation. All right. For those of you who I've stuck around for it. Let's get into now. Yeah. So women struggling with it, they disconnect from their body. Okay. Because of some of it is performance pressure. They feel like they have to perform. when you make her, when you're like the guy who's like, is it good? Oh, please, let me please you. Let me go down on you for an hour so that I know that you accept me. Not that going down on a girl is bad. I think it's great, but it's just the mental framework of, oh, let me please you. Okay, when you're that fucking guy, it puts a lot of pressure on her. Pressure on her to be like, oh yeah, I'm having a great time. Please don't kill yourself, you know. Don't cry in the bedroom and make this weirder than it is. I'm having a great time. That lack of confidence that so many men bring to the bedroom causes them to placate and be overly pleasing instead of just enjoying the experience and letting her enjoy herself. Puts pressure on her. That pressure causes her to disassociate from her body, right? And so all of these things can cause that. And so what ends up happening is you end up having some grifter selling an idea about energy orgasms. You see other women, you know, and clips on the Instagram of women having these orgasms. Women watch that, you know, psychologically, they do get turned on by it. And they say, well, you know, I just turned 40 yesterday and I've had nothing but terrible sex. Maybe I should go to the seminar. That's what ends up happening. You know what I mean? And then they go down the pathway of being grifted and being scammed. Instead of being scammed, though, they should have regular relationships with, you know, the guy that they're with or whatever, and have a better experience with that guy. Learn how to have better sex with that guy. If you're a guy who's with a girl, okay, instead of her trying to figure this stuff out on her own, she should be leaning to you to figure it out with her and for you to lead that bedroom experience. And you need the skills and experience to do that. All right, I got one guy listening. That's good. All right, I'll keep going. That's all I need. All I needed was one. All right, so back to things. So brain activity during orgasm. So with a girl's orgasm, there's widespread activity in the brain. There's also areas of her brain, like in her logical mind, that shut off. Okay. And it's different activity than a male brain. That's important to understand. All right. So a woman cannot have a full sexual experience when certain logic centers of her brain are turned on. She has to be able to shut off those logic centers and open up other areas of the brain where there's, you know, where there's reward, emotions, and some of her memory areas where the fantasy. So the memory areas are where the fantasy is. So when they put a girl's brain under a fMRI scan and orgasms and sex is happening, and you're seeing memory areas fire off, that's where fantasy lives. Fantasy and memory live in the same place. This is why sexual imprinting is so important. This is why her sexual past, by the way, is important. Okay, she can't unimprint what's happened. That's sorry, ladies who wish you could press the erase button. You can't. When you open your legs, you open your legs, and that's it. You know what I mean? And you have that imprinted in your brain now. You have to, you know, there's ways to handle it, but you can't erase it, unfortunately. But that is it. And so these areas of the brain are going off. Her memory areas and fantasy areas are going off, which means her brain has to be immersed in the experience and in the fantasy. But the logic areas and the reasoning areas of the brain are shut off or reduced. That means that she can't be thinking about what she has to do later. How does my hair look? Does this guy like me? Is he finished yet? Are we going to make it to our reservation? I wonder what the kids are doing. I wonder what my friend Sally's doing. I wonder what the other guy is thinking that I'm texting in my DMs. Like any of those things in her brain, in the logical areas and the wandering logical areas of her brain will start to disassociate her from her body, and she won't be able to have that full experience. Okay, so she has to be immersed in the sexual experience. We have brain scans to prove that. All right, there's greater activation for women who can orgasm without touch. They can, obviously it's very logical that these areas of the brain have greater activation during sex. Okay, so when she can shut her logic part of her brain off, turn on the reward centers, turn on the areas that are designed for her to have sensory perception of her body and her emotions and her fantasies and her memories. When those areas can turn on really hard and those logic reasoning areas can turn off really hard, she's susceptible to hypnotic suggestion and hypnotic orgasms, and having orgasms without touch, or having great experiences during sex, which is also nice too. Okay. So what does the scammer like Daniel Flash do? Well, they're exploiting real psychology. You have these horny middle-aged women who've learned to withhold sex to control their husbands. That's what's happened. Because they've learned that their power is with their pussies, their power is with sex. They learn to withhold or dish out sex accordingly to get the guy that they're with to do stuff. Once they fall into that framework, that is really a transactional framework, which if you've been paying attention, a transactional framework is a recipe for failure. This is why, okay? When she falls to that, sex becomes a tool and not something she's experiencing for herself. So she disassociates from the experience and starts to use it as a tool. This inevitably creates less of an oxytocin response, less of a neurochemical reward response from sex. The reward becomes the reward response in the brain happens with the non-sexual reward, like, oh, he bought me a purse because I gave him a blowjob, that kind of a thing, right? The reward becomes conditioned for the non-sexual reward, not the sexual reward, like the experience, the orgasms, and the intimacy. So there's less dopamine, less reward areas of the brain being stimulated during the sexual act, less of the attachment neurochemicals, particularly oxytocin, that gets to happen because there's less orgasms. And if they are there at all, then they're far less intense. And then what happens then? She starts to lose attraction and lose desire. Sex becomes a tool, not something she's doing for herself because she desires the guy she's with. So she loses the attraction for the guy. The sex she's having in the committed relationship becomes less and less rewarding because it's natural too in the brain that if you are reliant on an extrinsic reward, then the intrinsic reward becomes less and less. So for example, if you're working out to reward yourself at the end with looking better in the mirror, the workouts become less rewarding over time. You have to eventually feel good working out. You see what I mean? So like to do something consistently in any sense, whether it's sex or working out or, scheduling, calling clients for your business, whatever it may be, you have to find the intrinsic reward for it to be a long-lasting activity. Otherwise, what happens is the extrinsic reward has to get greater and greater to justify the effort that you're putting in intrinsically. And so you lose that intrinsic reward. And this is what happens to women psychologically with sex when they use sex as a means to have power in the relationship. When they use sex as a reward, when they use sex, it becomes less and less exciting for them to have sex. And what becomes more meaningful is the extrinsic or after non-sexual reward. Well, then the problem with that is the non-sexual reward has to get greater and greater to justify the sex she's having. And that implodes after a while, especially in a long-term, particularly monogamous types of relationships, marriages, that falls apart. And so now you have this woman who feels like she's sexually starved. She's sexually starved, but she doesn't want to have sex with her husband because she doesn't feel like it. And now this is where she's at. She's used sex for power, and now the relationship's falling apart. So and then that either ends in divorce or just a disassociated, terrible marriage. And then what happens? She eventually, this is usually middle-aged, which is why you see these women in these videos. You see them in middle age. Do you know what I mean? You see them 35, 40, some of them attractive for their age, but you don't see a ton of young girls. You know what I mean? Let me look up. You know, when we look at some of these things, we're not seeing a ton of young girls doing it. You know, we see some attractive women, but we're not seeing, you know, what are we seeing? You know? And so here I'm gonna do, there we go. So like this,
And as we twist, we pull. And we
guys
pull.
doing this, you know, this,
And as you
how many
pull,
divorces, you know, shut her mouth off. How many divorces has this girl been through? You know what I mean? Where's her husband? Where's her real relationship? I mean, she's probably followed, a lot of these women have followed this pattern and what's happened. You know what I mean? They've disassociated themselves sexually from guys they're having sex with. So then they turn to a grifter to try to tap into their sexual selves. That's what ends up happening. And it's really too bad because they're doing themselves a disservice. And this guy's, of course, getting all the play. I mean, you know, this guy's banging everybody's wife, you know, or at least he's doing whatever. And any guy who you're a complete cuck, by the way, if you send your girl to one of these, like you're a disaster. All right. Jeez. But anyways, back to this. So these horny middle-aged women have had a mental framework that's been destroying their sexual selves. The men that they're with don't know any better, don't know how to break them out of it. And that's you guys listening, a lot of you. Okay. And so what ends up happening is they're sexually starved. What is a sexually starved woman who's been starving herself for years since she settled down end up doing? You know what she ends up doing? Divorce, cheating, going on a eat, pray, love girls trip somewhere and banging a busboy. You know what I mean? Banging some younger guy that she meets at the bar to boost her self-esteem. All sorts of things. Or they end up at an energy orgasm seminar. You see what I mean? All of these things are unhealthy copes from just having good sexual experiences and healthy relationships. That's the problem. All right. And so women who follow that pattern are susceptible to scams. You guys are the ones in relationships with them. You guys are marrying them. That's what's happening. You guys are having children with them. So you need to fucking figure out what you're doing. That's why I have my community. And that's why this information is important. So now here's a little lesson here that'll help you. All right. To keep it simple. Immersion is the key. There's a number of other things involved that create the sexual experience for a woman. It is the topic for an entire course of material that I have tons of notes on and that has been being developed over the last few years. Anybody who's done any of my courses know that I only execute a course at the highest level. I'm not a grifter. So I take my time with stuff. I want to make sure I cover all my bases. This isn't an advertisement really much for it because I don't have a date. And I have another course that's coming out before that on Inner Game. That said, somewhere around after the first year, sexual psychology is going to happen. Okay. And it's going to be a very intense, very highly developed course on sex. And it's for you guys to, and if you're a mastermind member now, you're going to get all that stuff at a very, very low cost. I'm reconfiguring my rates and my structure. So by the time that this course does happen in 3 to 4 months, those who aren't mastermind or elite members today are going to spend more money. That's what it's going to amount to. It's going to be, why would I give away the secrets to how to have amazing sex and fix every problem you have in your sex life and in her life for $5? You know what I mean? For $100. I'm sorry, but I'm not doing that. You know, I only want committed people who are going to see the value, be willing to pay for the value, and then also do the work so that they have the results in their life. I really don't care to sell 1 million copies at 100. at a cheap rate so people can just discard the information. So this course is going to happen. If you're not in my community, if you're not in one of my programs, you're going to end up paying more for it, and you're going to want it. So it's just something to think about. But here's a little quick lesson, okay? Because again, we've already gone for quite a long time on the stream. I do hope you guys have enjoyed it, but here's the quick lesson. So one of the things a woman has to, we know from brain scans, not just anecdotal evidence, although we do know from that as well, that a woman has to be immersed in the experience, or psychologically she cannot connect with her body and orgasms can't happen. Okay. What causes this immersion? Her level of arousal and desire. That's number one. Now, how well or easily can she get aroused? Some of that's going to have to do with her psychological framework, her mental framework around sex, and some of her own personal, psychological things she has going on. And some of that will have to do with the desire for the guy she's with. Now, the desire for the guy she's with, part of it is definitely related to his physical attractiveness, but that's only part of it. There's plenty. I got story after story, because I've been doing this for a long time, of female clients coming in, and they'll tell me sexual experience guy was attractive, physically attractive, but then he started doing unattractive behaviors, and then I was no longer aroused by him. There are also plenty of scenarios I get from the guys and the girls I coach, that the guy was less physically attractive, maybe less even endowed, right? Because I had a guy in my community who was focused on penis size forever, and thinking that mattered, like less than this, less that, didn't have things going for him, but he could get her mentally aroused because the seduction skills were there. And so what happened? She had a higher sexual experience with that guy because she was able to get more immersed and psychologically connected to her body through that arousal. So looks are a factor. I'm not saying looks aren't important. You want to look as good as you can, but it's not the only thing that involves arousal. There's behavioral stuff. Okay, safety. So there's another thing about safety, and I don't mean just like consent, although consent is important, but it's more than just that, or feeling safe with a guy. A girl can feel safe with a guy, and that can kill her arousal, actually, because it's too much safety, right? So when I say safety, I don't necessarily mean that the guy is a safe guy, like he's a freaking, he's a wet noodle that couldn't hurt a flea. Now she feels safe with him. Like, that's not what I mean, because that's not going to stimulate arousal, and that's not going to create authority. But I'll get into authority. Safety just means that she's not having anxiety. Is really what that means. She's not worried about her own physical safety. She's not worried about her own emotional safety. She's not worried about in the moment that sex is happening. She may worry about that shit afterwards or before or whatever, but in the moment that the sexual experience is happening, she needs to get in a place of high arousal and high desire, where her brain, the area of the brain that shuts off, that logical area, part of that logical area is also the anxiety area. Okay. Does my hair look good? Does he think I'm attractive when I'm naked? All those questions. She needs to step out of that part of her brain. Do I look good naked is part of the safety thing. If I don't look good naked, he's not going to want to have sex with me. He's going to dump me. I'm not emotionally safe. You see what I mean? If I look bad, he's going to talk about me badly to other people. Maybe now I'm not safe in that sense, right? So anxiety of any sort, even if it's just about her own shit going on and nothing about you, lends to safety. All right. And if she doesn't have in those moments, the safety area, the concerns for her safety need to shut off. In fact, she could feel like I'm in danger here almost. And that could be very arousing because she's not anxious about it. She's instead a little bit, but that anxiety turns into like excitement. All right. It turns into tension. There's a difference between tension and excitement. And I'm anxious and I don't think I want to do this. You know what I mean? Or I'm worried about whatever. Okay. So she has to have that sense of safety. Now, that sense of safety doesn't just come from, although, consent is important. It doesn't just come from consent and being like, being emotionally cared for and stuff, because that can be the antithesis of arousal sometimes if done inappropriately. This leads to number 3, which is authority. Sex can't be a girl's fault. She doesn't want her orgasms to be her fault. There's a level of shame that is ingrained from an evolutionary perspective in every girl's brain, whether she likes to admit it or knows about it or not. When it comes to sex, there's a level of sort of shame and we'll say self-consciousness that exists in every woman's brain. What gets her to, then that causes her to get in the thinking parts, and she can't get into her body. When you have authority over her body, nothing's her fault. Now the pleasure she's feeling isn't her fault. The facial expressions or the noises she makes that she might be embarrassed of, well, that's not her fault. That's your fault. You see what I mean? When you have authority over her, then she can be free to not have to worry, to allow herself to get completely aroused and to get into her body and to psychologically connect with her body. That the authority is not necessary, because a woman could do this by herself, you know what I mean, without you. But authority is a key component that helps, that is almost necessary. Put it like that. It's very important. It bypasses a lot of problems. We'll put it like that. Sure, some porn star who has sex for a living and just does it all, just doesn't have any sense of worry or safety about herself. She doesn't have safety concerns or whatever. Like, maybe she doesn't need the authority in order to really experience pleasure, but most women really do need it to not be their fault. They need somebody else to give them permission. They need to submit to a man's authority, that she's, at least in the moment that she's having sexual experience, she needs to submit to that guy's authority. Well, now maybe you understand why so many women are having bad sex out there and don't have good sexual experiences and end up in some guy's weirdo seminar where he's doing psychic and energy orgasms, right? Maybe now that makes a little bit more sense when you understand, how can a weak man have authority over her vagina in order for her to stop the thoughts and get into her body? How can a weak man have that? How can a man who's placating and supplicating to a woman because he's trying to please her, but it's like he's doing it for his own validation, he's got insecurities, how is that man going to lead and have any authority over her body? How does a woman whose general ideas about men, maybe because of feminist ideas or whatever, are pretty terrible, how is she going to be able to surrender in the sexual experience and just submit to that dude's authority? Some feminist women can, a lot can't, because of their mindset about men. You know what I mean? How does that happen? So these are questions, right? And so you having authority over her body and being able to tell her what to do and having that dominance over her, that's going to get her to bypass the parts of her brain that will block her from getting into a psychosomatic response in the body and getting into that hypnotic state that she needs to get into in order to have intense sexual experiences. All right. So you create that intensity with your authority. Many of you guys don't know how to do that. You don't know how to have authority over a woman. And you're with women who don't want a man to ever have authority over them, which is why they're having bad sex too. Like, it goes both ways. So as a man, you need to learn how to break through those barriers and to be able to be in a place where you can hold that frame, lead, be in your body, recognize what's happening with her body, and seduce. And when you seduce, it's not in this placating, weak way like many of you guys think, or you just don't know, you just can't imagine what it would be like to be different. It's in such a way where you have authority over her, because if you have authority over her body, she trusts you at that point because she's consenting. There's consent, right? She consents to your authority. So now she's able to let herself go. Her concerns for safety are no longer concerns. The anxiety areas of her brain are not firing in a bad way. And instead that turns into tension, which is good tension. And she's able to get in the fantasy and other areas of her brain that allow her to connect better with her body, feel those sensations at a higher level, and then have those orgasms. Now, on Friday for my mastermind guys, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. And we're going to get into some darker topics and some things that cause women to lose control of their bodies in a good way. And I say darker just because there are things that could be weaponized if in the wrong hands. So I'm not going to share them on YouTube. That's something that you have to show up for mastermind on Friday for my guys who are in that. You guys will see that. But for the rest of you guys, at the very least, get in my community. I got courses coming up and things happening. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. It was a little bit long. It's kind of a two-parter where we talked about grifters and then we connected it to sexual psychology. But hopefully you guys had a good time, and I will catch you on the next one.